Okay, so here we are looking at 1853. You can see I haven't gotten very far. I've handed out the cash, and I wanted to note the game comes with some, $2,600 extra cash. It's kind of a nice touch because, for example, my 1830 game, I've lost a few bills, and that was identified here. I don't know. I'm assuming I have the complete set. It seemed I bought it used and from someone I trust, and everything looks very, very good. So, I'm not going to count it. But let's, it just seems silly. There's going to be very few games where the amount of money actually makes that big a difference, unless it's a huge amount missing, and there looks like there's quite a bit. So the first thing I did was I set those initial bids, and the way I started it was I just grabbed one player and said, okay, where do you want to go and what's your bid? And then I decided, the initial where do you want to go isn't really decided yet. What's decided is where do you want to go and what do you want to bid, but you don't have to write down your cities to begin with. So for the rest of them, I kind of put down the company they're leaning towards and what their bid was. Now I spread these out a little bit. I think there are a lot of useful companies. In particular, one player took the 4 company, which I think is kind of nice. It's what I used as my primary company in my 2-player game, for whatever that's worth. I kind of like the way it falls out, but it may not be the best by far. The 1 seems at its high value, and it's got a trouble laying the 2 tracks because it has to pay more. But it has crap. No, it's really restricted from existing. So here's the problem with the 1 company. You're not allowed to buy 3 cities on the Ganges. So there's a specific restriction about that, and I forgot. I didn't mention that in the rules overview, but there are a dangerous number of these little kind of things. The BBCI or whatever special rules is one of them, and in this case it's your opening bid. I haven't cheated yet, and we'll just play with what I've got. But your opening bid cannot include more than 2 cities from the Ganges Valley, that's this beige area, including Calcutta. In a bid with only 3 cities, you may only pick one of these, but you could include Calcutta as well. That's going to restrict the players who are looking at 1, but that's okay. Some of them may have been enough. We have the possibility to do 90, 110 on that. And I'll work with anybody who screwed up who thought they were working for a 1. So this guy only bid 90 for a 1, thinking dink, dink, dink. Well, he could do dunk, 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 and try to work it from this direction if he really wants to. So he's not screwed completely. They each have to take 3 cities. Now, here's the weird thing. The seating doesn't stay fixed. At this point, I have to reorder my players based on where their how much their bond is. So each player is putting this much money away. And let's see. My 3rd player here with 120, he's actually the 1st player. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to retrace these. And he's got an interest in 1 and a bid of 120. And now he'll start picking, he invariably gets the elephant. The next bidder, and let's just cross him off. The next bidder put a bid of 110 with an interest in company 8. The next bidder put 100 with an interest in company 5. Now these people may not get the company they're interested in. Then I have two 90s. Now this is determined by a die roll. I'm just going to give this guy the first roll here. It doesn't really matter. And he's interested in company 4. And we have player 5, who's a 90, interested in company 1. And then that gets rid of our two 90s. We end up with an 80 for player 6, interested in company 3. So now, the money is actually going to be doled away from the players at this point. And I'll do that when I'm off camera. They've put it into their little envelopes. Theoretically, it shouldn't be in the bank, so I may put it into the box as an extra pool. Usually you fold it up in an envelope with your cities listed in it. At this point, each of the players has to start picking a single city and a share. They don't tell anyone else what city they're going to, so you would never see this. Each player has their own little sheet of information. So let's look at player 1 and what they're doing. Player 1 has $120 bid. Now, it is kind of important to get rid of the money in the sense of I got to know what I got left. So 510 minus 120 leaves me with 390. Divide it by 4, that's the number of certificates I have to be able to sell, means I can't go for the 1 train with my big bid. Now, my big bid was intended to go for the 1 train, but now I've got to worry. So I probably want to go for another company. And this was an error at the beginning of the game in terms of figuring out what I would do. I didn't leave myself enough money to buy control of this. So now comes kind of the, well, what do I want control? The 2 doesn't look like it goes anywhere. It shoots up here and way out here. That's got a lot of places it likes to go, but this did not work out the way I wanted it with that 120. So now I'm going to look. I was kind of fixated over here. Is there anything else that I'm interested in? This is big money, but that's a minor company, which means I have a slower growth capacity. And I don't start with a headquarters here, so I may have trouble breaking into that. If I take a share of the 1, will that chase other people off, or will they come in with me? I'm not going to have the money. You know what? I've got 120. 50? 70? 110. Yeah, overbid is my problem. Said extra $10 would have done it. Alright, so my choices really come down to, do I want the 4 over here, or do I want one of these companies that operates out of here? The 5 is appealing. I do actually like the way the 5 works, even though somebody else was planning on that. I'm going to write down Jaipur as my first city, and I'm going to take a certificate of the BBCI. Let me get those bonds out of people's hands so I can do the calculations a little easier. So I pushed the money out of people's hands. Now this guy put a bond of $110 out. He's got an interest in the 8 railway, and we'll keep his interest if we can. He's got to buy that bond. The 8 railway is fairly cheap. We're talking way down here, this ECR. He should be able to do this. That's at $70 each. He can do that for $280. He easily has that. Could he do something more valuable? Sure. But maybe he'll use his money in investments in other people's rails and run his own lightly. So he's going to go with his plan, and he'll put down a place where he can only get that, Voltaire, and he'll grab himself a certificate of this. Now, they haven't paid for these certificates yet, but they'll have to do so once this initial bond is done. Now we go over to the third player, and he's got interest in the 5. That's what he was looking at building. With 410, I'm sure most of these can make it. It's only the one that's really tough to make. 410 divided by 4, well, yeah, obviously that's going to work. So he'll continue with his plan for now, and he's going to go with Ajmer. He wants to make this a major company for some reason, and he grabs a certificate of these. Now we go over to player 4, who was interested, it looks like, in company 4 down here. And again, he clearly has the money for that. So he'll take one that can only be that. He'll take Nagpur. Now I already contracted what I was going to do there out. But these players kind of come in with an idea of what they want to do, and then try to execute it. And if you screw up, well, maybe you do something different, and maybe that'll shake the game up in some way. Actually, we've got 2 people working on company 5. That may be a mistake. I may not. So I didn't give this guy a clear, but why am I helping this guy? Well, I'll let him sit with that as well. I should have noticed. But you kind of do want your own company just to control your fate a little better. But you can always sell off stock if it's not doing what you want. The problem is this guy is going to be sitting in the seat of the investor at this point. He may want to get out more companies to see what happens. I don't know. Alright, player 5 was interested in company number 1. He only has $90 in his bid. $90 is perfect, actually. Except it's not. 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, he failed again. You needed 110 to do this. The 1 is very hard to start. Had he had 110 bid, he could have done it, as we saw before. But they made the wrong bids there. So he's also in this position of, oops, now what? And I don't know now what. Unlike this guy, he wants to start his own company. Now, he's seen a number of companies that he thinks are kind of good to go. What's left that he hasn't picked up? The 4, the 8 hasn't been picked up yet, has it? Yes, it has. So the 4 and the 8 have both been picked up. Those are the Calcutta ones. Over here on the Bombay side, we only see the 5. The 2 is also associated with Bombay, but you know, the 2 looks terrible to me. It's sort of this wide reach over into this area. If I really want a company, sure, I can bid that, but it looks even more difficult to grab hold of. I think I'm going to go for my own company with the 3, the NWR. That gets me one central location. Maybe I can work with other companies elsewhere. So for the NWR, and it's got kind of the advantage of being able to hit these things. These give you a cash kickback to your treasury when you buy track to them for the first time. I don't know how big a bonus that is, but I've got 40, 60, 80 that I'd need to bid to hook up, and I can do that with my 90 without a problem. So I'm gonna grab Multan as my first pick, and you can see nobody's really matching their plans here. This is a tough game where you really can screw up very easily. And now the 6th player had interest in the 3, and he's just seen somebody buy that out from under him. Well, he's not really that interested in the 3, but here's the problem. He's got an 80 bid. There aren't a lot of places that I can get away with an 80 bid. What about the 6 company? That is running these 3 spaces. So right now I'm seeing, oh, can I get away with an 80 with the, hey, why not? I can do the 1 company. An 80 bid, and actually the 90 could have as well. Oops. An 80 bid is not bad for this. I can do 20, 40, 80. There's no reason I need to spend the 50 on Calcutta. I want to go to Calcutta, there's no question. But what the hell? So let's go to Lucknow and grab ourselves that share of the EIR. And yeah, you know, this wouldn't happen in a real game. People would be more careful with what they did, but it kind of randomizes what we have as a starting setup a little bit more. So now people are going to continue going through their lists, trying to fill out the companies that they support and that they want to see built. The guy who's in the most weird position is probably this guy, because this guy's going to get the presidency over him, just in terms of having older shares. So he may be interested in picking and choosing and taking shares from other companies. What's wrong? Well, his bond, he has to be careful. He has to make sure that, what did he pick here? He picked Ajmer. Well, he has to be sure that if he, say, makes a connection through Delhi, that it makes sense. That, for example, he sees, say, that the 1 is being started, that he maybe builds track, that he maybe takes picks in this direction if he wants 1 track. Being an investor in this game is actually kind of tough, because you do have to kind of react to other people. But I think that's what he's going to be trying to do. All right. So I'm going to come back around here, and he's going to start writing down his cities, just like we did there, but I'm going to do it off camera here. We're at a point where everybody's taking their minimum number of certificates, so they don't necessarily have to take more, but they might if their bid was high enough. And essentially, everybody's taken their own company. They don't have to announce which cities they went to, they just write those down secretly, except this guy who's kind of spread his out. Oh, shit. This is not what he wanted. It's hard for me to tell things apart. 3. He went to Lahore for his last one, which would be not this company. He picked up an NWR share. That was just a matter of grabbing from the wrong pile because they look the same. Okay. So there is the question of, does anybody owe anything still? So this guy has put 100 into his bond, 40, 40, 20, Delhi, Bombay, and Jaipur. That is not, he doesn't have $40 left, so he's not required to take another share. There's no reason to take another share. You don't want to make your connections more difficult. You might want to have put a bigger bond in play in order to get the first pick, although with what he took, that wouldn't have been the case. Taking the 1 would have been the thing that he thought would be difficult to do. Over this player has 80, 110. He's bingo. He cannot build it by anymore. 80 for this guy. That's only 20 off. He doesn't want to buy another one. 50, 90. He doesn't want to, or he can't. 80 here. He's 10 off. He can't buy another one. 20 is the minimum. And over here, 40, 60, 80. He's spot on. So everybody got by with just 3 certificates bonded for. That's important. You don't really want to put more on your bond. Now, throwing extra money into your bond can be kind of useful. Like I said, it gives you first choice of companies. I don't feel like the people who made the first choice of companies necessarily made the best choices, but we'll see how that works out. This guy obviously didn't get what he wanted. He couldn't do it with his calculations. Although he could have left a city out. He had that 120 bond. He could have gone 50, 60, 70, 110 with 3 cities and said, hey, I got it. Now he's slapping his forehead. I could have bought RIUs. Yeah. Essentially, yeah, you know, he could have done it, and now he left it off, and he ended up screwing this guy out of the company he wanted. But it's all good, because we're not really invested in any of these people. So now we move to the stock round, but here's the thing. Any companies that no one bid on just go away. Somebody's got the BNR. They're not available anymore. All the shares of all these other companies have to sell out. And that's going to be kind of tough, because you're only allowed to hold 4 shares of any given company. So you've got to get other people to subscribe in your companies. Now, at some point in the game, other people decide, and enough of them decide, that we need to move the game forward. We need to get more stocks available, more companies available. But it does kind of put this neat little barrier where there has to be some level of agreement among people with enough money to be able to force the stocks out so that these new corporations become available. It's not something that happens automatically as in some games. And I don't think forcing the stocks out necessarily, so like in 1835, it may be that forcing the stocks out kind of comes automatically. It didn't in my little 2-player variant because there weren't the certificate limits to hold that. So we go back to this guy, and everybody's got to pay for the shares they bought. So this guy's going to be paying 3 times 84, and hopefully they all have the money, $252. If they don't have the money, that's okay. It'll be turned over. So he has it, and I'll make the change. And I'll come back if anything weird happens. So after the stock round, with an investor in place, other people could buy other certificates. And a certain level of groupthink took place here. This guy kind of scoped things out and said, you know, I think the BNR has the best chance of making cash. Bought a share. This guy said, well, I better buy one too. He had room for 1 share outside his company. He didn't buy his own right away. He picked that up. And now we're beginning to see the effect of, oh geez, if I don't get one of those, I may not have one, and they could be very valuable. This guy was without, mainly because his initial selection with the spread out stocks, he didn't want to be reaching all the way down to Calcutta for his requirements. He has kind of a connectivity thing that he can't control, but that he thinks is very likely with the cities that he picked, just given the companies, that where he may get his bond back more quickly than other players do because he went as an investor. This guy picked up his 4th share fearing that he might not get any, and you can see he's already got his president's certificate. That's kind of there's a strange situation here. Those certificates aren't supposed to be handed out until the end of the stock round, and I'll be doing that momentarily, although I'm not quite sure why that's the case. But there weren't enough shares if he didn't do that, because 2 other people wanted to buy certificates. And then everybody else is floated except for this guy, so this guy had to pick up his extra share. And that pretty much puts us at the final point. Nobody's got enough cash for another certificate. So we're going to be moving forward. Now, for the companies that have started, we put these little cubes out to track their value on the stock market. The others don't go out there. They're not really competing on a stock market as they would in other XX games. And I've got to set up the company charters for the different players, give them their cash, they get full starting cash, and then we'll come back and start the operating rounds. So the BBCI was floated as a major company, and we got all the dots out on the board just to help me define areas and such not in my head. But we do have one minor which was floated, this little East Coast Railway, which means all the trains will be in the game. Now I'm going to put these aside. They'll be used as kind of I use them as replacements so I don't get too confused by these. These will be just for the 1Ms, but as of right now you can buy either of these if you're a minor company. If you're a major company, you can only buy the 2 train. And I'll replace those with that. These become extra filler at some point or another. If the pool runs out and a minor company can only buy a 3 train. All the rest of the trains are in play. We don't take any out. The way they put it is that you should add trains if a minor's floated. Well, it's kind of hard to tell what to add. You have to look in the book and look that up. So it's really subtracting trains to me if you forget. And now our operating order is going to be run just by company order. It's always done top to bottom here, with the red going first because they floated. And I'm going to take a little break, charge this up a little, and I'll be back. So as we enter the first operating round here, this is where a kind of tough decision comes into play. The first company, the red thing here, EIR. I have 2 little headquarters. I can try to run 2 track lays at once. One could come out of here, and then I could start running down here, collect up money, and take my time hooking up. And then the other one may be heading towards Delhi. What do I care about? Well, I have to check my little sheet. This is player 6 who cares right now. Now somebody else may get control of the company. That's hard to imagine, but in fact I haven't exchanged all my presidencies yet. I'll have to catch those for the rest of them. But somebody else could get control of the company. He's only got 3 shares. And divert its attentions to what he wants to do. But this guy is worried about among other things, about making his bond. So he's got Lucknow, Benares, and Delhi. To me, that almost means the hell with Calcutta if I don't want to pay that $50 a time. I want to build my track cutting through here. Now there's going to be some heavy expenses to that track. I can't use narrow gauge because I can't buy this train. Now, I could build narrow gauge track, but then I couldn't run my train, and that would be dumb. So I'm going to be building through multi-river. Probably try to skip this and move up here. In this game, you want to hit doinkers, not avoid them. Lucknow is just a single river, but let's see. 2 multiple rivers is going to cost me 120. A single river will cost me another 40. That's 160 just to hook this all up. I think I can afford to be making 2 track lays a turn. But the other question is, how quick are the trains going to go? How quickly is it going to be available to buy another train? A 3 train for 440, which is a lot of cash. But there's a lot of cash that flows into the companies in these games because of the mail runs. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 companies out there. There's only 7 of these trains. I think I can wait. This is a tough call. It really is. Because if the trains don't fall quickly, I really, really want it to be able to make that double track lay. Like, there's going to be 1 or 2 operating rounds right here. But if nobody buys 2 trains at once, well, then I could be stuck for a while without the right to build that extra track. Whereas, if I pay the 50 and all the trains come out, and this is sort of one of those groupthink or opposite of groupthink type things. If everybody else is going to buy 2 trains, I don't want to do it, and I don't want to be building 2 track. But if nobody else is doing that, I want to be doing that because I'll be the only guy who's got 2 trains running, and I'll make the money. I think the $50 factor is something to help decide that I don't want to do that. So now I want to find track that will do something here. What something? That's a good question. I have to get Benares connected up, but I don't have to do it right away. Now, what's kind of weird with this track is you got no straight cities in this game. You got these little dead ends here. So, I kind of like this because it gets me a boinker. I'm not in a terrible hurry to get to my destinations. I'm in a hurry, but not a huge one. And that's going to cost me, Rivers, $60, which I'll pay. I don't really want to, well, I can fiddle with the money a little bit. Okay. There's 440. Paper money is fresh. I don't think the former owner used it at all, so it's kind of hard to get your grasp on it. I might have to lick my fingers or something. Okay. Now I can buy my trains, but I've made my decision. I'm only going to be building 1 track per turn until the 3s come out. Save myself some money. I don't have any trains, so I can't run any. I get to buy one. I'm just going to buy a single 2 train. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to exchange this for one of these. Just in order to be clearer what I've got. And I spend $300 on that train. And now my cash is kind of low. Notably, my stock value does not go down because although I didn't pay out, there's no share in here. If somebody had sold a certificate of mine, and they take a £5 penalty for doing so in the first round, then I would be losing share value right from the get-go. And now we'll be moving to the next company, which is this black one, which is Northwestern. And I'll just tell you what I did with them. So maybe I kind of lied. So I'm starting off with them. I'm going to pay the $20 because it's only 20 for them instead of the 50 for the other company to expand my trap more rapidly. And I drop into here and here, both free builds. I don't have any trains. I'm not going to be able to run a train from this station next turn. See, here's one of my feelings with this company is I don't have a lot of double tracks I'm going to play for a while. I've got one here, as I'm expanding this way, and then what? I mean, there's no other exit. Now, once the green track comes out, there will be that other exit. But how often am I going to want to do it? How many of my track lays are going to be upgrades? And money keeps rolling in. So I want to get the quicker start on this company. I only need to buy one train though, which is good because it'll save me the opportunity to make a decision on another train later. Now the reason I only need one is I'm not going to be able to run another train off this company. I'm going to be running a little 2 train off here, and I'm going full bore to get my bond money back. I'll get another one of these. Now these become potentially available to smaller companies if that's the case, if that's needed. I'm going full bore to get my bond money back because that's an extra certificate. And you know what? I don't necessarily care whether this company's good or not. It's going to make me some cash. And now we move on to the company that everybody thinks is going to kick ass, the B&R. Wonder why. B&R also makes the choice to pay the $20 in order to lay 2 tracks. Those are freebie tracks in each case. And they buy their 2 trains to begin with because they're going to be able to run a train here and a train out of this station. They're hitting valuable locations right from the beginning. All right, and again, no payout, no effect on thing. We go over to this little interesting fella, who also looks like he may want to run the dual trains right away. That $20 a turn for the double track lays, that's really not that big a penalty. The red company has the additional penalty, has the higher penalty, so it's maybe a little bit more attractive to them to hold out. Okay, and we pushed through double train or double track purchases, double train purchase for our Bombay guys down there. And now we're at the final of the companies, which is just a minor company. It has some interesting situations. If it wants to buy a train, the only one available to it is this 1M or 2. There is an advantage to buying the metered track, and no real disadvantage to it, except I get less cities on a train. But cities on a train aren't terribly important in a lot of cases. However, a 1M is particularly weak. That doesn't give me a lot of track, a lot of places to hit. On the other hand, I get it for $100 less, and I'll be saving money building through some tricky terrain if I buy the 1M train. The 1M train becomes obsolete, I believe, at the purchase of the 4 train, along with the 2s. If this weren't here, there would be a whole new set of 7 of these that are optional, which means I could still buy a 1M train, but only for the minor companies. But there'd also be one of these available. And finally, I have this special token which would allow me to buy the metered train of the next level, but I have to wait until all of these are cleared out. So now I have some difficult decisions to make. Like, do I want a train? Do I want metered track? If I don't want metered track, I'm not sure it's absolutely necessary here, but if I build normal broad track here and metered here, I start to make things difficult for myself because I have to make sure my trains align correctly with what I want to own. I could also start building normal track here by a normal train, or the metered train, Doesn't really matter. This may be the best move. And also use my token to buy the first of the 2M trains. Or I could just buy this and that and buy 3 trains, or 2 trains for a lot of cash. Come back when I make my decision. I'm going to have to think about this a little bit. I chose to go with normal track and to buy a normal 2 train. That clears these out. Now there's still 7 1M trains available for minor companies if they wanted to buy another one, but they're not going to, so I'm just leaving that blank. These guys are available to anyone. Now, I didn't have the cash to buy one of them in addition to the 2 train. That's okay. I'm going to want another train on this company. I'm going to want to head up this way, and I think I'm going to want normal track for it, or a normal train for it. But I can either, well, I can make my mail runs and swallow and such and put myself in that position. There's only one operating round enforced here. So now we go to the elephant. And the question is, does the elephant want another operating round? No, he doesn't. Nobody's made any cash. Nobody's going to change anything. That puts him in a just fine position in this stock round where nothing's going to change. He'll keep his elephant. And we'll be starting a new set of operating rounds. Of course, I could sell the elephant to someone, but nobody's terribly interested in it. And it's probably most valuable to me as the investor. I want to have it in my hand. And we're going to hit another operating round, and then I get another option. Do I want to extend it, or would I rather just go to another stock round again? I can pretty much say for guarantee nobody's doing anything in the stock round, so I'll just slide ahead to the next operating round. Now we're going to see some trains operating. And you know what? This has been long enough that I'm going to load this up and start a new video.